Now let's look at symptomology. We're talking about environmental damage, which means we see a lot of different types of symptomology. One of them is temporary wilt. A temporary wilt is where you've got a lack of water at that particular time, even though the overall water situation could be very well. At that particular time, you don't have enough water. This presents a problem for plant growth. You can have scorch. This is where the temperature gets increased on a small amount of tissue, many times due to a combination of factors. You can have winter burn. Cold temperature, windy, causes desiccation. Etiolation is, again, going back to an auxin type response where you will get bending of the tissue. We often talk about lodging, which is where the plant is bent over to the ground and no longer has the ability to get back up. Let's look at some of these and see how they're dealt with. This shows you white druplet disorder of red raspberry. It's caused by high temperatures and ultraviolet radiations. When we think of raspberries, normally we think of a cold climate plant. They can grow in warmer climates. However, they have to be somewhat protected because they are somewhat fragile to high temperatures and ultraviolet radiation. This is freeze injury on orange. Notice how one half of the fruit is fine, the other half has got problems. This occurs where the part that's got the problem would be the part facing out. The other part is towards the inner part of the tree. What can they do with this? Well, they may juice this orange. It's surely not going to be something that you're going to try and sell as a eating type orange, and you use the rest of it for other byproducts. This shows edema on geranium caused by high relative humidity, high soil temperature, and overwatering. Too much water is just as bad as too little water. You can see the edema on here where you've got this type of puckering of the tissue. Where it's brownish, it means that it's not going to have proper cuticle, which means it's going to be subjected to drying out. Temporary wilt. This is a indoor plant. You can see how all the leaves are bent down. You take a cup of water, you dump it into the middle of it. Within 15 minutes, you got a normal plant again. This does occur if you don't water them properly. Sun scald on pepper. You get rain, the outer part of the plant becomes moist. You get sunlight on the moisture, it boils the moisture, and the next thing you know is you get sun scald, or actually a cooking of that part of the plant. This is winter burn. You can see the dead leaves on this due to too cold, too much wind on this particular part of the plant. It's going to give you a winter burn. Lodging occurs where a plant gets knocked over. You can see here where wind came in on this and it knocked these plants over. This looks like oats, and what you can understand from this is if you are going to harvest this crop, you've got to get that crop standing up. Otherwise, the harvester is going to go right over top of it. If you set a herd of cattle out here, they'll pick it up. If you have something like a harvesting machine, it's going to be problems. Here's another spot where a blast of wind or a microburst caused everything to be knocked over. When we look at symptomology, we can tell chemical injury by flecking and stippling. We want to see, what does the symptomology look like? What's the margin of the lesion look like? When we're dealing with this, we look at clues. Clues of abiotic diseases. Number one, it appears suddenly. These things come up real quick. It's fairly uniform. Nothing seems to be larger, nothing seems to be smaller. It's all kind of fairly uniform. Different species of plants in the same area with similar symptoms. This almost never occurs if you've got a biological sort of thing. Most biological organisms are not that spread out. If you've got different plant species in the same area and they've got similar symptoms, that's kind of diagnostic that you've got an abiotic disease. Foliar lesions have a distinct line between healthy and affected tissue. You get a transition zone on a pathogen type thing. You get no transition zone on a abiotic thing. Here's where the diseased tissue stops. Here's where the healthy tissue starts. There's no transition zone in there. So this is always very important. You don't find the biotic signs. Remember when we talked about rust, we talked about fungi. There were a lot of different signs that you could find. You don't find any of these things in an abiotic type disease. Dead tree in a canopy. What happened? Don't really know. Didn't get close enough to it. Could be lightning. Could be many other things. Could be insects. In Florida, several years ago, we got a pest that came in and killed off all of the sweet bay. They really did a job on it. We lost several trees out on our property. It seemed like they just came in. When we got up close to it, we could figure out that this was an insect problem because there were things like frass on it. In here, we don't see that particular thing. That could be abiotic in nature. It could be lightning or something like that. This was an interesting one on palm tree. When we looked at this, you can see down on the bottom we've got a leaf blown up. The one thing you want to look at on the leaf is how these lesions are actually linear. They actually follow kind of a line, be it a curved line or a straight line. As you've got a straight line in here, that is biotic in nature. In the end, this particular type disease looks like it's abiotic. When you see something like this, what you have to do is you have to start asking questions. When did this happen? How long ago did you transplant it? You gather the information to come back to figure out whether or not this is biotic or not. Was this transplant shock that killed it? Was this already established and then all of a sudden something came in? When we look at diagnosis, we have to be able to ask all these different questions to actually try and figure out what caused this particular problem. When we look at diagnosis is always asking questions, trying to get as much information, look around, see if there were things occurring in the area that might have caused this, or if this is something that just kind of happened. Was it gradual? Then it's not going to be abiotic. Was it quick? Then it could be abiotic. Do you see any fungi on it? Not abiotic. So we start going out, we start eliminating things based on symptomology to come up with a good diagnosis.